Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're well, wherever you are in the world. For those new around here, my name is Kevin and I've been a professional photographer for over 16 years, shooting documentary style weddings, family stories, street portraits and environmental portraiture. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 tips that I think will help you become a better photographer based on my experience and background. Now this video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform I use for all of my websites, and I'll discuss that a little bit later. As usual, all the images in this video are created with my Film Edition 3 presets, and you can find a discount to those below as well. And if you wait until the end, I'll show you one of my favorite sequences of images I took of my own kids, which kind of sums up everything we're going to talk about today. It's a lot of fun. So let's dig in. Tip 1 is to become a better observer. Now on my street photography workshops, I make sure that most of the day we are working on our observation skills rather than technicalities of camera controls. Sure, they are important, but anybody can understand aperture, shutter speed, etc. But only you can see what you want to see through the viewfinder. It would be a boring world if we all saw the same thing through the camera. So honing and enhancing your observation skills will set you apart from others, enabling you to enjoy photography more and certainly make you a better photographer. Dorothea Lange, known for her powerful images from the Great Depression, once said, "A camera is a tool for learning how to see without a camera." And I think that's such a great quote. Becoming a better observer is fundamental to enhancing your skills as a photographer. This process involves developing a keen eye for details, nuances, and the subtleties of your environment, which in turn can significantly enrich the depth and storytelling power of your photographs. You won't become a better photographer by always having the camera to your eye, so take time to watch, wait, and observe first. When I'm shooting weddings or out on the streets, I spend way more time with the camera not at my eye than with it there. I'm looking for the light, the people, the action. I will miss so much of that if I'm just constantly looking through the little viewfinder of the camera. Enhancing your observation skills is something that you can all do all of the time, and you can use things like themes to help you do it. Essentially, a theme is just like a project. Most professional photographers don't just randomly snap away. They have a brief or a project in mind. These briefs can be small or large, but they are always important. For example, some of my ongoing street photography projects are based on simple reflections, and another one is based on older people in love. I'm always watching and looking. I never go out for the day shooting street without a theme in mind. Of course, that doesn't mean to say that if something comes along that will make a great shot, I wouldn't take it. Of course I would. But it gives me a focus, and it always leads to fewer photos being taken and more keepers. Now, if I told you to go outside, you've got 5 minutes, go outside and take 5 photographs and then send them to me, you'd likely panic a bit, worry that there isn't anything interesting or the photos won't be good enough to share. However, if I said go outside and take 5 photos of something around the theme of motion, you'd have a starting point. You'd look and watch. You might see vehicles moving, people moving, even clouds moving. You might use a slow shutter speed to get something more interesting. The point is that you are looking first, you are observing, and being a good observer will help you become a better photographer. Now, before we go to tip number 2, as mentioned, this video is kindly sponsored by Squarespace, and about 5 years ago I transferred all my websites to Squarespace and have never looked back. My entire business, including the blog, e-commerce and marketing elements, is run on my Squarespace website. With the new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint, you can create a completely personalized website, which I think is amazing. You can choose from professionally curated layout and styling options to build a unique online presence from the ground up, tailored to your brand or business and optimized for every device. You can easily launch the website and get discovered fast with integrated and optimized SEO, so you show up more often on the internet. It really is a superb system for photographers to showcase their work and build their business. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Kevin Mullins to save 10% off your first website or domain purchase. Okay, tip number 2 is to try seeing in black and white. I always have my cameras set to a black and white film simulation. Now, if you shoot in RAW, you will still be able to edit in color, but be careful if you shoot in JPEG, as all your images will remain black and white forever. So you're probably wondering why I suggest you try shooting in black and white, even if you're shooting RAW images. Now, I can get a much clearer view of the way the light is falling off and the subtleties between shadow and highlight, and it also declutters the image from the interference of color. Of course, this way of shooting may not be for everybody or every situation, especially if you're shooting something where color is critical in your composition, such as macro shots of flowers, for example. However, as a photographer who shoots candidly and rapidly, understanding the light is critical, and seeing in black and white immediately allows me to see the light better in the viewfinder. The key really is to see the light and work with it instead of against it. I couldn't do this in my DSLR days because even though I could shoot black and white JPEGs on those cameras, the viewfinder was optical and you didn't get to see what the camera was metering. However, all mirrorless cameras will allow you to do this, and I really encourage you to try it. Simply set your camera to a black and white film simulation mode. Additionally, if you use spot metering as much as I do, then you'll be able to grasp this idea and work with it in your photography even more. Of course, there are many metering modes and ways to shoot, but this tip explains why shooting in black and white can help you use light more effectively. We know that a great image comprises good composition, a good moment, and great light. If we can help ourselves to build these images quickly and more confidently with the aid of the camera, then it makes a lot of sense, right? I did dedicate a whole video to this a few years back, and I'll link to it in the description below. Now, tip number 3 is to embrace the imperfect. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, essentially, many new photographers think an image must be pixel perfectly sharp and perfectly edited for it to be good enough. This simply isn't true. I always tell my clients and students that a picture doesn't have to be good, it just needs to be important. But what does that actually mean? Imperfection can often convey a sense of authenticity. In a world where so much imagery is polished and curated, photos that are not perfect can stand out by offering a more honest, unfiltered view of the world. They can make subjects feel more real and relatable, thus strengthening the emotional connection with the viewer. Embracing imperfection shifts the focus from achieving technical excellence to capturing moments. This shift can free us from the presence of perfection, allowing us to focus more on the emotional impact of the scene and the joy of the photographic process itself. For example, take a look at this photograph I took at a wedding back in 2013. If I told you this was perhaps my favourite wedding photo I'd ever taken, would you be surprised? Well, it is, and it's far from perfect. The image was shot at 12,800 ISO on a Fujifilm X Pro 1 camera. It's grainy, it's got blown highlight areas, but I love it for what it is. It's two very happy people in love. And for me, that's all that counts. It's the moment. Take a look at the work of Robert Frank, whose gritty, off-kilter images in The Americans challenged the norms of idealized photography in the mid-20th century. Compare iconic images shot in the 40s or 50s to your Instagram feed. What do you see? The shots from 70 years ago are rarely sharp, often not perfectly straight, and usually very gritty or grainy. These photos are iconic, and of course, technology was not what it is now, but the fact that these photos are still held up as examples of great photography tell us something. Of course, I'm not saying shoot everything so it's bad. I'm simply encouraging you to react to images as they come along and shoot for the story or the subject first. Technically imperfect elements like motion blur, out of focus areas, or unusual exposures can also be used for creativity to add energy, movement, and mood to images. These aspects can turn an ordinary scene into a stirring, dynamic photograph that captures more than just the visual elements, but also the moment's feeling. And on a deeper level, embracing imperfection aligns with philosophical reflections of the human condition. It touches on themes of vulnerability, resilience, and the transient nature of existence. By focusing on these aspects, photographers challenge conventional standards of beauty and composition and create more profound connections with their audience. Embracing imperfection is about celebrating reality in all forms, often resulting in more compelling and memorable photography. If you're starting out in photography or a seasoned pro, I really encourage you not to discard images just because you don't think they will look very good on Instagram or they're a little bit out of focus. Okay, tip number 4, don't be afraid of P mode. It's a common misconception that good photographers always shoot in manual mode. I shoot a lot of my work in P mode, or A mode as it's called in the Fujifilm world. And if it's good enough for the great Martin Parr, then it's good enough for me. P mode is available in pretty much all modern cameras and many older ones. It effectively makes the camera fully automatic. It's program mode in the true terminology, and if you use a Canon and probably Nikon, though I've never used a Nikon camera, you will see P as one of the options on the camera. For Fujifilm users, it's having all of the settings on the red A. In essence, you're giving full control to the camera to look after shutter speed, ISO and aperture. You're then just responsible for clicking the button at the right time. How great is that? This is possibly the simplest way to get the camera up and running and shooting as quickly as possible, but it's also a beautifully relaxing way to work. And this tip kind of links back to tip number 1 about being a better observer. Whether that's at weddings, commercial, personal or street, I want to become a better observer, not a better photographer. I genuinely believe that anybody can be a photographer, but only you or I can see what we want to see. And by that, I mean anybody can understand the exposure triangle. We've talked about this already, but it's really the seeing that makes it all different for us. Having the camera in P mode is not a bad thing. Allowing the camera to take the strain regarding the exposure settings is very liberating and allows you to concentrate on the moment and the composition. It's a really cathartic way of shooting. Of course, there are times when you will need to shoot in aperture priority or fully manually, but don't think for one moment that shooting in P mode is cheating. It's not. It's how I shoot 95% of my commissioned work. Tip number 5 is more of a micro tip, I guess, and it relates to a problem we all have. And that's about something I call digital vanity, Instagram, the internet. Simply don't worry if you don't get the likes or the acclaim you want on Instagram or wherever you're sharing your work. Now, of course, I'm talking to you as a photographer who's shooting personal work here. What are you shooting for? You have to ask yourself that. Are you shooting for the enjoyment of photography, the art of it, or are you shooting for the currency of likes? Photograph and share, of course, but enjoy it. Love the art of photography, but the only person who should be caring about your photos is you. So there you have it, some useful tips, I think, to help you become a better photographer. Let me know what you think in the comments, or if you have any other ideas to share, put them down below. And hang around for a few minutes and I'll show you a series of images I shot in 24 hours celebrating my little boy's birthday. It's from a few years ago, but it's fun. It's all shot in P mode and I absolutely love it. Thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Do like, subscribe and share if you so wish, and I really hope to see you next time.